After the question became loud in me, I began to hear it in my brother too. He did not always say it the way I did. I carried the question like a wound. He carried it like a weapon. In episode 6 of my childhood, my heart kept asking the same thing over and over. Where was my father? Where was he when the hands that promised help began to hurt me? Where was he when I learned to lower my head in a house that was not mine? Where was he when I needed someone to stand between me and humiliation? That question burned inside me, but in my brother, it had already become something harder. He did not ask where our father was as if he expected an answer. He asked as if the answer had already condemned him. Our father was gone. That was enough. To my brother, absence was not a mystery. It was betrayal. It did not need explanation. It did not deserve mercy. It did not ask for patience. It was proof. The man had left. The man had failed. The man did not deserve to be called father. I understood his anger even before I fully understood my own. My brother had suffered too. He had watched our mother carry burdens she should not have carried alone. He had seen the tiredness in her eyes. He had heard the careful voices of adults when they spoke about our father. He had felt the difference between children with fathers and children without one. And he had also lived under the shadow of other people's help. He knew what it meant to depend on hands that could hurt. He knew what it meant to be treated like a burden. He knew what it meant to hear people speak of generosity while forgetting dignity. But unlike me, my brother did not leave a secret door open in his heart. He closed it early. Maybe that was how he survived. Some children survive by hoping. Others survive by refusing to hope. I was still somewhere between the two. I blame my father, but in hidden places I still imagined him coming back. I still imagined the door opening. I still imagined a man entering our lives with regret in his eyes. I still imagined rescue, even when anger told me not to. My brother did not imagine rescue. He imagined judgment. If our father ever came back, my brother already knew what he would do. He would reject him. He would not listen. He would not be moved by tears. He would not be impressed by apologies. He would not allow the man who left to return as if time had waited for him. That was the difference between us. I was wounded and confused. My brother was wounded and decided. His anger had structure. Mine still had questions. At first, I thought my brother's anger made him stronger than me. He seemed less vulnerable. He did not look toward the road with the same secret hope I carried. He did not ask adults for stories about our father. He did not try to imagine his face with tenderness. He did not search for signs of resemblance. When people mentioned our father, my brother's face changed. His eyes became cold. His mouth tightened. The room could be full of noise, but if that name entered, something in him stood still, like a guard at a closed gate. I watched him many times, and each time I wondered whether I should become like him. Maybe anger was safer. Maybe hope was foolish. Maybe I was humiliating myself by wanting a man who had not wanted me enough to stay. Maybe my brother had understood something I was too afraid to accept. A father who leaves should remain gone. That was what his silence seemed to say. But my heart did not obey that sentence easily. It kept asking. It kept waiting. It kept building imaginary scenes of return. And because of that, I sometimes felt weaker than him. I felt ashamed that a part of me still wanted our father. Ashamed because my brother's anger made my longing look like betrayal. Betrayal of our mother. Betrayal of our suffering. Betrayal of the child I was in the house of other people, swallowing humiliation and asking where my father was. How could I still want the person I blamed? How could I still imagine him protecting me after he had failed to protect me for so long? How could I still keep space for him in my heart when my brother had already buried him there? These questions created another conflict inside me. Not only between me and my father, but between me and my brother. Not openly at first. We were both children shaped by the same absence, but absence does not shape every child the same way. Pain enters each person through a different door. In me, it entered as longing first, then blame. In my brother, it entered as anger first, then a wall. He began to speak about our father less and less, but when he did speak, his words were sharp. He would not call him a good man. He would not excuse him. He would not accept any gentle explanation. If someone said our father had suffered, my brother's eyes would harden. We suffered too. If someone said our father had made mistakes, his face would close. His mistake became our life. If someone said maybe he would come back one day, my brother's silence would grow heavy. Coming back does not return the years. He did not always say these words aloud, but I heard them in him. Sometimes he did say them, and when he did, I felt the truth of them. That was the hardest part. His anger was not empty. It had reasons. He was not angry because he wanted to be cruel. He was angry because he remembered. He remembered the struggle. He remembered the shame. He remembered our mother's tired hands. He remembered the people who looked at us as if we were incomplete. He remembered the houses where help came with humiliation. He remembered everything, and memory had made him a judge. For him, forgiveness was not a beautiful word. It was a dangerous word. Forgiveness sounded like allowing the guilty man to escape. Forgiveness sounded like pretending the wounded child had not cried. Forgiveness sounded like opening the door to someone who had already proven he could walk away. So my brother rejected forgiveness before forgiveness was ever requested. He built his position early. If our father comes back, he will not find me waiting. I heard that sentence in many forms, sometimes in his words, sometimes in his silence, sometimes in the way he walked away whenever our father's name came near. His anger frightened me, but it also protected me in a strange way. Because when my own heart became too soft, his anger reminded me of the pain. When I imagined our father returning and everything becoming better, my brother's face reminded me that nothing would be simple. When I wanted to believe that one apology could heal everything, his hardness reminded me that some wounds do not open for easy repair. In that way, my brother became a witness I could not ignore. He witnessed our suffering differently, but truly. He carried a part of the story that my hope sometimes tried to soften, and I carried a part of the story that his anger tried to bury. Together we were two halves of the same wounded childhood. He was the fire, I was the question. But fire and questions can live in the same house and still not understand each other. There were moments when I wanted to speak to him honestly. I wanted to tell him that I hated our father too, but also missed him. I wanted to tell him that I blamed him, but still wondered what his voice sounded like. I wanted to tell him that sometimes, after being mistreated, I imagined our father coming to protect me. I wanted to ask if he ever imagined that too, but I rarely asked, because I was afraid. Afraid he would call me weak. Afraid he would say I was foolish. Afraid he would look at me as if I had betrayed our mother by still wanting the man who left her to struggle. So I kept those feelings hidden. My brother's anger made my longing feel like a secret shame. And still, I loved him, because I knew his anger came from the same place as my tears. He was not my enemy. He was another child standing in the ruins of our father's absence, trying to find a way not to collapse. If I hid inside imagination, he hid inside hardness. If I survived by dreaming of a father who might return, he survived by declaring that he did not need one. But did he truly not need one? That was the question I never dared ask. Sometimes when he thought no one was watching, I saw something in him that did not look like anger. It looked like tiredness, a deep tiredness. The tiredness of a child who has been forced to hate someone he should have been able to love. That kind of hatred is exhausting. It requires strength every day. You must keep remembering the pain so your heart does not soften. You must keep the case alive. You must keep the door locked. You must keep telling yourself that the person outside does not deserve to enter. My brother did that, day after day. He held the anger like a shield. But a shield can become heavy. I saw that heaviness sometimes. I saw it when other children spoke proudly of their fathers. I saw it when family matters came up and our father was absent again. I saw it when adults offered pity. I saw it when our mother looked tired. His face would harden, but beneath the hardness there was pain. Pain wearing armor. As we grew, the difference between us became clearer. I became quiet, observant, inward. I stored questions. I tried to understand people. I watched the world and wondered why love could be so unreliable. My brother became sharper. He spoke with certainty. He disliked excuses. He respected strength. He had little patience for people who caused pain and then expected sympathy. Our father had shaped both of us, even without being present. That was the cruel power of absence. The absent person still raises the children in a way, not through guidance, but through the wounds left behind. My father's absence taught me longing. It taught my brother rejection. It taught me to ask why. It taught him to say never. It taught me to imagine return. It taught him to prepare refusal. And because of that, I began to understand something important. If our father ever returned, he would not be returning to one wound. He would be returning to many. He would have to face my questions. He would have to face my brother's anger. He would have to face my mother's silence. He would have to face the years that could not be brought back. He would have to face the children he had not raised, the pain he had not seen, the mistreatment his absence had allowed. He would have to face not only what he did, but what happened because he was not there. At that time, I did not know whether any man could face that and survive. Maybe that was why I imagined him as a hero sometimes, because only a hero could return and repair so much. But my brother did not believe in heroes. He believed in consequences. One evening, after another difficult day in the house of other people, I remember sitting with my brother in a silence that felt full. We did not need to explain everything. He could look at me and know the day had been hard. I could look at him and know he was angry before he spoke. The house around us carried its usual noises. People moving, objects being placed down, voices rising and falling. But between us there was a separate world, a world made of shared pain. I do not remember who mentioned our father first. Maybe no one did. Maybe his absence entered the silence by itself, as it often did. But I remember my brother saying something that stayed with me. He said that a father who is not there when his child suffers should not expect to be welcomed when the child becomes strong. Those words entered me deeply. They sounded true. They sounded fair. They sounded like justice. But they also frightened me, because somewhere inside I feared that I would welcome him anyway. Not because I had no pain, not because I had forgotten, but because the hunger for a father still lived in me, no matter how much I tried to bury it. That night I lay awake thinking about my brother's words. A father who is not there when his child suffers should not expect to be welcomed when the child becomes strong. I repeated it silently. It gave my anger strength. But it also made my hope feel guilty. I wondered what kind of son I would become if my father returned. Would I stand with my brother and reject him? Would I open the door and betray the pain we shared? Would I ask questions first? Would I cry? Would I hate him more after seeing him? Would I love him because he was finally there? I did not know. That uncertainty separated me from my brother in a quiet way. He already knew who he would be. I did not. That made him appear stronger. But maybe certainty is easier when the heart has chosen not to feel certain things. Maybe my uncertainty was not weakness. Maybe it was the part of me that still believed people could change even before I had proof. I would not understand that until much later. Much later, when my father returned with repentance instead of pride. Much later, when my brother refused him and I stood between them. Much later, when I tried to convince my brother that forgiveness did not mean forgetting. Much later, when I saw that my brother's anger had been protecting a wound almost identical to mine. But in episode 7, all of that was still far away. For now, my brother's anger was growing, and my own heart was learning from it. I began to use his anger as a mirror. When I felt too soft, I looked at him and remembered the pain. When I felt too hard, I looked at myself and remembered the longing. Between us, the story of our father became divided. To him, our father was the man who had no right to return. To me, he was the man I wanted to condemn, but still wanted to know. That difference would one day become important. Because when repentance came to our door, our responses would not be the same. My brother would see the past first. I would see the possibility of repair. My brother would remember the child who suffered. I would remember him too, but I would also see the man who had finally come back. My brother would demand justice. I would search for healing. Neither of us would be completely wrong. That is the painful truth. Wounded people can respond differently and still both be telling the truth. My brother's anger was true. My longing was true. His refusal would be understandable. My openness would be risky. And our father's repentance would have to stand strong enough to face both. But before that future arrived, anger continued to shape my brother. He became protective in his own way. Not soft protection, not gentle protection, but the protection of someone who has decided that no one will easily fool him again. He warned me about people. He told me not to trust too quickly. He told me that people who help can use help against you. He told me not to beg for love. He told me that we had to become strong because no one was coming. No one was coming. That sentence sounded like the opposite of my secret hope. I wanted someone to come. He wanted me to stop waiting. In many ways, my brother was trying to save me from disappointment. He saw my hidden longing, even when I tried to hide it. Maybe not clearly, but enough. He knew I still carried a small hope for our father, and because he loved me, he wanted to kill that hope before it hurt me again. But hope is stubborn. Even wounded hope. Even ashamed hope. Even hope that hides under anger. Mine survived. Not loudly, not proudly, but quietly. And that quiet hope made me different from him. There were days when my brother's anger became too much for the room. It filled the air when our father's name was mentioned. It made adults uncomfortable. Some tried to calm him. Some told him not to speak that way. Some said he was too young to understand adult problems. But he understood enough. He understood the absence. He understood the consequences. He understood that children pay for adult decisions. He understood that the people who suffer do not always get to explain their suffering politely. So when adults told him to be respectful, his eyes would harden. Respectful to whom? To the man who left? To the silence? To the history that had placed us under other people's roofs? He did not always say it, but his face did, and I understood him. Even when I feared becoming like him, I understood him. Because I too had asked where my father was. I too had blamed him. I too had swallowed humiliation. I too had felt the hands that hurt. The difference was that my brother's pain had already become a closed door. Mine had become a door with a lock, but the key was still hidden somewhere inside me. I did not know who would find it. I did not know that one day my father would. Not by force, not by excuses, not by demanding respect, but by repentance, by staying, by working, by accepting our anger, by proving that he had come back not to erase the past, but to help rebuild what he had broken. That future was impossible to imagine clearly then. If someone had told my brother that our father would one day become the cornerstone of my success, he would have laughed bitterly. If someone had told me, I might have wanted to believe it, but I would have been afraid to. Because at that point in our lives, our father was still the central absence. He was still the unanswered question. He was still the reason my brother's anger had grown teeth. And as I watched my brother, I began to understand that pain does not only wound the heart, it changes the way a person prepares for life. My brother prepared for life like a battle. He expected betrayal. He distrusted apologies before they were spoken. He believed strength meant never needing the person who abandoned you. He believed forgiveness should be earned, if it was given at all. In some ways, he was right. Forgiveness without repentance can become another wound. Trust without proof can become another trap. Love without accountability can become weakness in the hands of careless people. My brother knew that instinctively, but he did not yet know that repentance can be real. He did not yet know that a guilty man can return humbled. He did not yet know that some people change not because they are forced, but because regret has finally broken their pride. He did not yet know that the father he rejected in advance would one day stand before him unable to defend his failure. At that time, my brother only knew pain, and pain told him to protect himself. So he did. He protected himself with anger. He protected me with warnings. He protected our mother's dignity with refusal. He protected our childhood memories from being rewritten too easily. That was his role in the story. He became the keeper of the wound. I became the carrier of the question, and our father, wherever he was, remained the absent cause of both. As episode 7 closes in my memory, I see my brother not as an angry child only, but as a wounded guardian standing before a locked door. Behind that door was all the pain he did not want to feel again. The waiting, the shame, the helplessness, the sight of our mother struggling, the houses where help hurt, the question of where our father had been. He locked all of it away and stood in front of it with anger in his hands. I did not know then that one day I would ask him to open that door. I did not know how hard it would be. I did not know that convincing him would become one of the most difficult parts of accepting our father. I did not know that his refusal would test my own forgiveness. I only knew that my brother was angry. And I knew his anger had reasons. Good reasons. Painful reasons. Reasons born from the same absence that had shaped me, so I did not judge him. How could I? We were both children of the same missing man. We were both trying to survive the same wound. He survived by saying never. I survived by asking why. And somewhere far ahead, beyond the house of other people, beyond the hands that hurt, beyond the question that burned in me, beyond my brother's anger, there waited a day when our father would return. On that day, my brother's anger would rise like a wall, and I would stand before that wall, not to destroy it, but to ask whether a repentant father deserved one chance to prove he had changed. But that day had not come yet, for now there was only the child I was, the brother beside me, the father missing from us both, and an anger that grew stronger every time his name entered the room. My brother did not want a father anymore, at least that is what he told the world. But I would later understand that sometimes the people who say they do not care are the ones who cared so deeply that the wound became unbearable. His anger was not the absence of love. It was love disappointed, love abandoned, love turned into defense. And because our father had not been there to receive that love, my brother turned it into fire. That fire would burn for many years, until repentance came close enough to feel its heat.